Quick audiobooks bring the world's best nonfiction books to you cover to cover. Listen to the complete, unabridged audio versions of life-changing books. Transform your commute, your workout, or your downtime into your new library. The Unseen Hand, Your Brain's Secret Rules for Life, Love, and Money. Introduction. Why rationality is a myth we love to believe. Have you ever found yourself doing something that, upon reflection, made absolutely no sense? Something that, if you were watching someone else do it, would make you shake your head and wonder, what were they thinking? Of course you have. We all have. Perhaps you've overpaid for a fancy coffee you didn't really need, just because it came with a name that sounded exclusive. Or maybe you've committed to a diet with fierce determination on Monday, only to find yourself face down in a pizza box by Wednesday evening. We've all been there, scratching our heads at our own inexplicable behavior. For centuries, the prevailing wisdom, especially in fields like economics, painted a picture of humanity as fundamentally rational. We were Homo economicus, logical, self-interested beings, meticulously weighing costs and benefits, and consistently making choices that maximize our utility. Our decisions, so the story went, were like perfectly engineered calculations, precise and predictable. But what if I told you that more often than not, you're not a rational actor at all? What if your irrationality isn't just a random fluke, a moment of weakness, but something far more systematic, far more pervasive? What if your irrationality is in fact predictable? This is the central premise of The Unseen Hand. It's not about suggesting you're stupid or fundamentally flawed, far from it. It's about revealing the astonishing, often hidden, algorithms your brain uses to navigate the world. Algorithms that are incredibly efficient for survival, but often lead us astray in the complexities of modern life, money, and relationships. Our brains, you see, evolved for a very different environment than the one we inhabit today, and those ancient shortcuts often misfire in fascinating and consistent ways. My journey into the science of irrationality began, in many ways, with a personal ordeal. At 18, I suffered third-degree burns over 70% of my body. The long, agonizing recovery process, particularly the daily ritual of unwrapping my bandages, an intensely painful experience, exposed me to countless instances of human decision-making under extreme conditions, both my own and those of the medical staff. Why were certain treatments chosen? Why did some pains feel worse than others, even if physiologically similar? Why did my own perception of my suffering shift so dramatically? These questions, born from direct, visceral experience, planted the seeds for a lifelong quest to understand the mechanisms behind our choices. Later, as a young academic, I found myself repeatedly challenging the dogma of perfect rationality. I'd design experiments, often with a mischievous twinkle in my eye, that were simple, elegant, and almost always yielded the same counterintuitive results. My colleagues and I would present people with choices, frame them in slightly different ways, and watch as their rational preferences evaporated, replaced by predictable, sometimes comical patterns of irrationality. It was like discovering that gravity sometimes works sideways, but only if you hold your apple just so. This book is an invitation to peer behind the curtain, to see these unseen hands at work. We'll uncover how the simplest tricks of context can dramatically alter your perception of value, making you choose options you wouldn't otherwise touch. We'll explore why the word free acts like an irresistible siren song, luring you into decisions that can cost you dearly. You'll discover the surprising ways social norms and market norms clash, often with disastrous consequences for trust and relationships. We'll confront the stark reality that your cold state intentions for self-control often crumble into dust when your hot state emotions take over. And we'll unpack why we perpetually procrastinate on what's good for us, even when we know better. Each chapter will be built around a core idea, illuminated by quirky, thought-provoking experiments, many of which you can even try at home or observe in your own daily life. We'll meet participants who, like us, believe themselves to be rational, only to be swayed by invisible forces. We'll dissect their choices, understand the underlying psychological mechanisms, and then, crucially, explore what this means for your life. The goal here isn't to shame you for being irrational. We all are. It's to empower you. By understanding these systematic deviations from rationality, you can begin to anticipate your own follies. You can design better systems for yourself, cognitive prosthetics, if you will, to buttress your weaker inclinations. You can learn to be more mindful of the forces that influence you and others, leading to smarter financial decisions, healthier habits, more fulfilling relationships, and a greater sense of mastery over your own destiny. So prepare to have your perception of your own decision-making gently and sometimes hilariously overturned. Prepare to challenge intuitions you once trusted implicitly. This journey promises to be both intellectually stimulating and deeply practical, equipping you with the tools to navigate the complex, often non-rational world we inhabit. Let's pull back the curtain and see the unseen hands that guide us. Shall we? End of introduction. Why rationality is a myth we love to believe.
Chapter 1. The Truth About Relativity. Why Everything is Compared and Manipulated. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where, after making a choice, you immediately felt a twinge of regret, wondering if you'd picked the wrong option? Perhaps you splurged on the slightly larger, slightly fancier coffee, or perhaps you opted for the mid-range item on a menu, feeling vaguely satisfied that you hadn't gone for the cheapest, but also hadn't overspent on the most expensive. These subtle nudges, these internal debates, are often not about the absolute value of the choices themselves, but rather about their relativity. Our brains, you see, are hardwired for comparison. We rarely evaluate things in absolute terms. Instead, we constantly size things up against what's nearby, what's similar, or what was just presented to us. And this fundamental cognitive mechanism, while often useful, leaves us incredibly susceptible to manipulation. Let me tell you about an experiment, one of my personal favorites, that brilliantly illustrates this point. A few years ago, I stumbled upon a peculiar advertisement for The Economist magazine. It offered 3 subscription options. Economist.com subscription, $59 for online access. Print subscription, $125 for the physical magazine. Print and web subscription, $125 for both print and online access. Now, take a moment. Which option would you choose? If you're like most people, your eyes probably darted to options 2 and 3, and you thought, wait a minute, why would anyone choose the print-only subscription for $125 when they can get both print and web for the exact same price? It makes no sense, right? This seemingly redundant option, the print-only subscription, is what we call a decoy, and its presence is not an accident. It's a masterful piece of cognitive engineering. I decided to test this with 100 of my MIT students. When presented with all 3 options, here's how they voted. Economist.com only, 16 students. Print only, 0 students, unsurprisingly. Print and web, 84 students. Clearly, the print-only option was a non-starter, but its presence was key. What would happen if I removed that useless decoy option? I presented a new group of 100 students with just 2 choices. Economist.com subscription, $59. Print and web subscription, $125. Suddenly, the preferences shifted dramatically. Economist.com only, 68 students. Print and web, 32 students. Do you see what happened? By simply removing this seemingly irrelevant decoy option, the number of students choosing the most expensive print and web option plummeted from 84 to 32. Their preferences didn't change because the options themselves changed, but because the comparison set changed. The decoy option, though never chosen, served as a powerful magnet, making the print and web option appear incredibly attractive by comparison. It wasn't $125 for print and web, it was print and web for the price of just print. A steal. This is the insidious power of relativity. We don't evaluate things in isolation. We don't have an internal utility meter that precisely measures the absolute value of a cup of coffee, a new car, or a romantic partner. Instead, our brains are constantly asking, compared to what? We compare prices, features, benefits, and even people, often without consciously realizing it. This comparative thinking is a fundamental shortcut for System 1, our fast, intuitive brain allowing us to make quick judgments in a complex world. But it also means we're incredibly susceptible to the context in which choices are presented. The decoy effect isn't just something the economist uses. It's an unseen hand that guides our decisions in countless aspects of life. Shopping. Have you ever seen two blenders? One for $100 and a slightly fancier one for $200. You might think $200 is too much. But then a third blender appears, a truly high-end professional model for $500. Suddenly, the $200 blender doesn't seem so expensive. It's the mid-range, sensible option compared to the $500 behemoth. Retailers are masters of placing these anchor items to make their target products look like a better deal. Dating and job hunting. This might sound cynical, but the same principle applies. If you're a single person looking for a date, going out with a friend who is similar to you but just a little bit less attractive can, believe it or not, make you look more appealing to potential partners. Similarly, a job candidate who is almost as good as the top choice but has one glaring weakness can make the top choice shine even brighter. We use decoy people, too. Real estate. Real estate agents are well aware of this. They might show you a house that's slightly worse than what you're looking for, and perhaps a bit overpriced, just before showing you the one they actually want you to buy. Suddenly, the target house looks like a much better value, even if it's still more expensive than you initially planned to spend. The pain of comparison extends beyond commercial transactions and dating strategies. In our modern, hyper-connected world, social media has amplified the relentless pressure of relativity. We are constantly exposed to the curated highlight reels of others' lives, their perfect vacations, their career successes, their seemingly flawless families. This creates a destructive comparison set. We stop evaluating our own lives against our personal goals or past achievements and start measuring them against the perceived perfection of others. Keeping up with the Joneses isn't just a metaphor, it's a cognitive trap that can make us perpetually dissatisfied, even when, objectively, we are incredibly well off. We compare our ordinary to their extraordinary, our messy reality to their polished facade, and our System 1, always seeking a clear judgment, declares us lacking. So, how do we navigate this predictably irrational tendency? How do we prevent ourselves from being manipulated by the unseen hand of relativity? First, we need to recognize it. The next time you're making a choice, whether it's a purchase, a career decision, or even forming an opinion about someone, pause and ask yourself, what am I comparing this to? Is that comparison fair and relevant, or has it been subtly engineered? Be aware of decoy options, anchoring prices, and social benchmarks. Second, expand your comparison set. If you're looking at a $40,000 car, don't just compare it to a $50,000 car and a $30,000 car. Compare it to the opportunity cost of that money. What else could $40,000 do for you? Could it fund a year of travel, a down payment on a house, or a significant investment in your education? This forces System 2, our slower, more analytical brain, to engage and consider broader implications beyond the immediate choices presented. Third, and perhaps most importantly, intentionally choose your comparisons. In life, we have some control over our reference points. If you're constantly comparing yourself to the ultra-wealthy, the supermodels, or the prodigies, you're setting yourself up for chronic dissatisfaction. Instead, choose to compare yourself to your past self, or compare your situation to those who are genuinely less fortunate, or simply compare it to the fundamental joy of simply being. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about consciously designing your cognitive environment to foster contentment rather than endless envy. Relativity is a powerful force, an unseen hand that shapes our perceptions and choices every single day. By understanding its mechanisms, we gain the power to resist its more manipulative forms, and perhaps even redirect its energy towards a more satisfying and intentional life. But relativity isn't the only trick our minds play on us. Next, we'll delve into the astonishing power of a single word: free. End of Chapter 1, The Truth About Relativity.
Chapter 2, The High Cost of Free, Why Zero Price Isn't Always a Bargain. There's a word that, more than almost any other, can make our brains momentarily short-circuit. It's a word that evokes an almost primal, irresistible pull, causing us to abandon logic, ignore true value, and sometimes even act against our own best interests. That word, my friends, is free. You might think that free is just a price point, simply $0. But in the world of predictable irrationality, free is far more than just a number. It's an emotional hot button, a powerful trigger that instantly shifts our decision-making from a rational cost-benefit analysis to an excited, sometimes reckless, emotional response. When something is free, the perceived risk of a bad purchase vanishes. And when the risk vanishes, our usual cautious calculations fly out the window, replaced by an almost giddy sense of opportunity. Let me take you back to one of my favorite experiments, one that reveals the staggering power of free. I set up a candy stall at a public place, offering 2 types of chocolate. A delicious, high-quality Lindt truffle for 15 cents usually sells for 50 cents. A standard Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent usually sells for 2 cents. Both were clearly great deals. Here's what happened when people were given these choices. Most people chose the Lindt truffle, 73%. Fewer people, 27%, chose the Hershey's Kiss. This makes perfect sense, doesn't it? The Lindt truffle, even at 15 cents, offered superior value. People were willing to pay the extra 14 cents for the significantly better chocolate. Our rational brains were at work, comparing value for money. But then I performed a subtle yet utterly transformative magic trick. I simply changed the price of both chocolates, lowering them by just 1 cent. Lindt truffle for 14 cents, Hershey's Kiss for free. Now think about this logically. The relative difference in price between the 2 options remained exactly the same. The truffle was still 14 cents more expensive than the Kiss. If people were rationally comparing value, the preference shouldn't have changed much. The Lindt was still a fantastic deal at 14 cents for a premium chocolate. But that's not what happened. The results were astounding. Only 31% chose the Lindt truffle, a whopping 69% chose the Hershey's Kiss, the free option. Do you see the irrationality? The presence of free completely flipped their preferences. People were willing to forego the obviously superior Lindt truffle, even for a mere 14 cents, simply because the Hershey's Kiss came with that intoxicating 0 price tag. It wasn't about the monetary difference, it was about the psychological appeal of free. When something is free, our decision-making cortex seems to hand over control to our emotional, excitable System 1. We stop thinking about the marginal cost or the true benefit. Instead, we perceive free as having enormous value, as if it represents a gain beyond monetary measure. There's no downside, no risk, no regret. It feels like pure joy. This high cost of free manifests in countless ways in the real world, often leading us to make choices that are far from optimal. Shipping offers. Why do people add unnecessary items to their cart just to qualify for free shipping, even if the cost of the extra items exceeds what a standard shipping fee would have been? Because free shipping eliminates the perceived pain of paying for delivery, triggering the free hot button. Buy one, get one free, or BOGO, is another powerful example. We often end up with 2 of something when we only needed 1, or buy an item we wouldn't have purchased at all simply because the second one is free. The excitement of getting something for nothing overrides the rational question, do I actually need 2 of these, or even 1? Government policies and incentives, the power of free is not lost on policymakers. Offering free flu shots, free basic health screenings, or free energy audits dramatically increases uptake, even if the actual monetary cost to individuals was previously very small. The psychological barrier of any payment, no matter how small, is often higher than the actual monetary cost.
online services, and freemium models. Think about the apps on your phone or the social media platforms you use. Many operate on a freemium model. A basic version is free, but you pay for premium features. The initial free hooks you, gets you invested, and often leads to deeper engagement and eventual spending. The free entry point creates a powerful psychological commitment. But free comes with hidden costs that we often fail to account for. Opportunity cost. By choosing the free item, we might be passing up a better, slightly priced alternative that would have offered more value or enjoyment in the long run. Our experiment with the chocolates is a perfect illustration. Clutter and waste. The allure of free often leads us to accumulate things we don't need, don't use, and that ultimately contribute to clutter and waste. How many free samples, promotional items, or digital downloads do you have that genuinely add value to your life? Lower quality perception. Sometimes free can actually imply lower value or quality. While the free price tag attracts us, if a product or service is always free, we might question its worth, especially if we later need to transition to a paid version. Time and effort. Free items aren't always truly free. There might be a cost in terms of time spent in line, effort expended to acquire them, or the personal data you exchange. Our brains, captivated by the zero monetary price, often neglect these hidden costs. Navigating this free landscape requires conscious effort and a healthy dose of skepticism. The next time you encounter a free offer, pause and ask your more rational system too to step in. Do I actually need this item or service? What is the true cost in terms of my time, effort, or other opportunities I might be missing? Would I choose this if it cost a nominal amount, say 5 cents? Am I sacrificing something better just because this option is free? By understanding the disproportionate emotional power of free, we can begin to disentangle ourselves from its irrational pull. We can learn to make choices based on actual value and need rather than being swept away by the intoxicating zero. Because sometimes the biggest bargain comes with the highest hidden cost. Our journey into predictable irrationality continues as we explore the invisible rules that govern our social and market interactions. End of Chapter 2, The High Cost of Free.
Chapter 3, The Tyranny of Norms, Why Social Rules Trump Market Rules, and Vice Versa. Our lives are governed by rules, spoken and unspoken. We navigate a complex landscape of expectations, obligations, and reciprocations every single day. But what if I told you that there are two fundamentally different sets of rules at play, constantly interacting, sometimes clashing, and often dictating our behavior in ways we don't even realize? These are social norms and market norms, and understanding their distinct characteristics and the danger of mixing them is crucial for navigating relationships, business, and even public policy. Let me illustrate this with a now famous experiment conducted in Israeli daycare centers. Parents often picked up their children late, causing headaches for the teachers who had to stay behind. To combat this, the economists involved in the study decided to introduce a classic market mechanism, a small monetary fine for late pickups. The idea was simple: make tardiness costly, and parents would be incentivized to be on time. It seemed like a perfectly rational solution. But here's where the predictable irrationality kicks in. Instead of decreasing, late pickups increased significantly after the fine was introduced. And perhaps even more astonishingly, when the fine was eventually removed, the late pickups remained at the higher level. What on earth happened? The fine fundamentally changed the nature of the relationship between the parents and the daycare centers. Before the fine, the parents operated under social norms. Picking up your child late wasn't about money, it was about guilt, empathy for the teachers, and the social obligation of being a good community member. Being late was an offense against a social contract, but when the fine was introduced, the relationship shifted to market norms. Suddenly, being late wasn't a social transgression, it was a service with a price. Parents essentially paid a small fee for the convenience of being late. Their guilt vanished, replaced by a simple calculation. Is the cost of the fine worth the extra time I gain? For many, the answer was yes. And once that social norm of guilt was broken by the introduction of a market norm, it was incredibly difficult, almost impossible, to put it back. Let's define these two powerful forces. Social norms are these unspoken rules of society, the friendly requests, the favors, the shared responsibilities that bind us together. Think of helping a friend move, baking a cake for a neighbor, or volunteering for a cause. There's no explicit payment, no immediate ledger balancing. Reciprocity exists, but it's often diffuse and long-term. Our motivation here is goodwill, community, and the desire for social connection. Market norms are the explicit transactional rules that govern our commercial lives. They involve precise costs, explicit benefits, wages, prices, and contractual obligations. Think of paying your plumber, buying groceries, or negotiating your salary. Reciprocity is immediate and usually monetary. Motivation here is typically self-interest and maximizing personal gain. The danger arises when these two worlds collide. As the daycare experiment showed, bringing market norms into a social exchange can completely destroy the underlying social fabric. Once you introduce money into a relationship that was previously governed by social goodwill, it's incredibly difficult to go back. A thank you for a favor is replaced by a calculation of how much that favor was worth. Consider these real-world manifestations of the tyranny of norms. Family and friends. Imagine asking a lawyer friend for a little advice. This operates under social norms, but if you then offer them a small fee, it instantly shifts to market norms. The lawyer might feel insulted. Am I so cheap? Or they might accept, but now the interaction is transactional, not a friendly favor. The goodwill, the implicit expectation of mutual support is diminished. Workplace culture. Many companies try to foster a sense of community and team spirit. They might host company picnics, celebrate birthdays, or encourage employees to help each other out. But what happens if they start offering tiny bonuses for peer help, or track favors given and received? The intrinsic motivation of goodwill can be replaced by a transactional mindset, where people only help if there's a clear, explicit reward. Volunteerism. People volunteer their time for deeply personal, altruistic reasons, social norms. If you start offering volunteers a small hourly wage, you might attract a different type of person, and paradoxically, you might even reduce the number of truly committed volunteers who are motivated by passion, not pay. The small payment doesn't cover their perceived market value, and it cheapens their social motivation. Healthcare and education. These are often debated domains where the tension between social and market norms is palpable. Should healthcare be a social right, provided based on need, or a market service, provided based on ability to pay? The way we frame and structure these services profoundly impacts public perception, quality of care, and equity. The insidious nature of this phenomenon is that market norms, once introduced, are like a one-way street. They stick. It's nearly impossible to snap back to the warmth and generosity of social norms once a price tag has been attached. The innocence of the social exchange is lost, replaced by a colder, more calculating evaluation. So, how we leverage norms wisely? First, be mindful of the context. Before you introduce any kind of monetary transaction or explicit measurement into a relationship, consider whether it's truly a social exchange or a market exchange. If it's social, lean into the goodwill, the favors, the implicit reciprocity. Don't cheapen it with money. Second, understand the power of free within social norms. While free can have hidden costs in market exchanges, in social contexts, offering something freely, your time, your help, a small gift, without expectation of immediate return, can profoundly strengthen relationships and foster deep loyalty, far beyond what any market exchange could ever provide. Third, don't mix your messages. Be clear about which norms you're operating under. If you want a favor, ask for a favor. Don't offer a token payment that might insult rather than incentivize. If you need a task done professionally, treat it as a market transaction and offer fair compensation. Finally, cultivate social norms where they matter most. In your personal relationships, your family, and your community, prioritize goodwill, genuine help, and selfless giving. These are the bonds that create resilience, meaning, and true connection, far beyond what any market exchange could ever provide. The tyranny of norms reminds us that our motivations are far more complex than simple economic incentives.
We live in a dual world of social warmth and market coldness, and understanding which rules apply when and how to prevent them from contaminating each other is a crucial step towards navigating our relationships and society with greater wisdom and intention. Next, we'll explore how our emotional states can derail our best intentions. End of Chapter 3. The Tyranny of Norms.
Chapter 4. The Power of Arousal. Why Hot States Make Us Impulsive. Imagine, for a moment, that you are two different people. One of you is calm, rational, and thoughtful, planning for the future with clear intentions. Let's call this your cold state self. This is the you who sets New Year's resolutions, plans your healthy meals for the week, and vows to save money. Then there's the other you, impulsive, emotional, focused solely on immediate gratification, and often self-destructive. This is your hot state self. This is the you who breaks the diet, overspends on a whim, or sends that angry email you immediately regret. The profound and often terrifying truth is that we consistently underestimate the power of our hot state selves, leading to a predictable pattern of impulsive, irrational choices. My own journey into understanding this dynamic began, in part, with a personal observation about my recovery from severe burns. In my cold state, lying in the hospital, I would make solemn promises to myself about how I would manage the pain during the daily bandage changes. I would focus on my breathing. I would meditate. I would count. But the moment that nurses began the agonizing process, as pain surged and my hot state took over, all those rational intentions evaporated. I would plead, scream, and often lash out, completely unable to adhere to the calm strategies I had so carefully planned, just minutes before. The chasm between my two selves was stark and frighteningly real. Later, in my academic work, I decided to formally investigate this empathy gap, our inability to predict how powerfully our impulses will sway us when we're in an emotionally aroused or hot state. The experiment my team and I designed was, shall we say, a bit provocative. We brought male students into the lab under the guise of an internet pornography survey. We asked them a series of questions about their likelihood to engage in various morally questionable or risky behaviors, both when in a neutral, cold state, and then again when sexually aroused. The differences were astounding. In their cold, rational state, the students confidently stated they would never engage in certain risky behaviors. They believed they would always remember to use protection, or would never force themselves on someone, or would always prioritize their long-term values. But when they were in a state of sexual arousal, their predictions shifted dramatically. Their moral compass seemed to spin. Their willingness to engage in risky or ethically dubious actions soared, and their memory for their cold state intentions vanished. They became, effectively, different people, incapable of empathizing with their own rational self. This isn't just about sex, of course. Hot states are triggered by a range of powerful emotions and physiological needs. Hunger. Try making healthy food choices when you're absolutely famished. The cold state intention to eat a salad quickly gives way to the hot state craving for a double cheeseburger. Anger. That calm resolution to handle this professionally often crumbles when someone triggers your temper, leading to words or actions you later regret. Fear or anxiety. Panic can shut down rational thought, leading to irrational decisions in moments of perceived crisis. Pain. As my own experience showed, intense physical pain can completely hijack our ability to think clearly or adhere to pre-planned coping strategies. Excitement or greed. The thrill of a potential big win, gambling, speculative investments, can make us blind to risks we'd easily identify in a cold state. The empathy gap means we systematically underestimate the influence of these hot states on our own behavior. We plan in cold states, confidently believing our rational intentions will hold, only to be ambushed by the overwhelming power of our impulses when a hot state descends.
This is why we can't stick to our diets, why we make impulse purchases, and why we sometimes say things we deeply regret. Our rational self simply doesn't understand the power of the beast within. So how do we bridge this treacherous gap? How do we protect our cold state intentions from the tyranny of our hot state impulses? The key lies in pre-commitment strategies, often referred to as Ulysses Pacts, after Odysseus, who had himself tied to the mast to resist the siren's song. These are strategies where you make decisions in your cold state to bind your future hot state self. Financial safeguards. Set up automatic savings transfers that you can't easily undo. In your cold state of financial prudence, you commit your hot state self to saving. Dietary controls. Don't keep junk food in the house. Shop after you've eaten. These cold state decisions remove hot state temptations. Alarm clocks. Place your alarm clock across the room, forcing your sleepy hot state self to get out of bed, honoring your cold state intention to wake up early. Cooling off periods. For important decisions or emotionally charged conversations, establish a rule. I will not make this decision or send this email for 24 hours. This gives the hot state time to dissipate, allowing System 2 to regain control. Accountability partners. Make your intentions public or commit to a friend. The social pressure acts as an external commitment device. Avoiding triggers. Learn what environments or situations reliably induce your hot states and, where possible, avoid them. If late-night social media browsing leads to anger, put your phone away. The first step to gaining control over your impulsive self is self-awareness. Begin to recognize the physiological and emotional signals that indicate you're entering a hot state. Notice the rising tension, the quickening pulse, the tunnel vision, the sudden craving. Simply acknowledging, I am entering a hot state right now and my judgment is compromised, is a powerful System 2 intervention. It creates a tiny pause, a flicker of conscious awareness that can, sometimes, be enough to prevent an automatic, regrettable action. We are not always the rational, consistent individuals we believe ourselves to be. Our powerful emotions and physiological needs can temporarily transform us, making us blind to our own best interests and future well-being. But by understanding the predictable power of these hot states and strategically implementing pre-commitment devices, we can begin to bridge the empathy gap, protecting our rational intentions from the powerful pull of impulse. This continuous battle for self-control brings us naturally to our next topic, the pervasive problem of procrastination. End of Chapter 4. The Power of Arousal.
Chapter 5. The Problem of Procrastination and Self-Control. Why we can't stick to our resolutions. Procrastination. The universal human experience. That nagging feeling of something important left undone. The internal monologue promising, I'll do it tomorrow, which invariably becomes, I'll do it the day after tomorrow. We all know it, we all despise it, and yet we all engage in it. Why? Why do we consistently fail to stick to our resolutions, save for retirement, or tackle that daunting task even when we know, deep down, that it's in our best interest? The answer lies in a fundamental bias of human decision-making, present bias, also known as hyperbolic discounting. Our brains, you see, are not very good at evaluating future rewards and costs in a consistent, linear way. Instead, we have a strong and innate preference for immediate gratification and a powerful aversion to immediate pain or effort. We hyperbolically discount future rewards, meaning the value of something far off in the future diminishes sharply in our minds, especially when contrasted with an immediate alternative. $1 today is worth significantly more than $1 promised a year from now. And, crucially, $1 available right now is often chosen over $1 available in an hour, even if that hour is just a fleeting moment. This present bias pits our aspirational, future-oriented System 2 against our impulsive, present-focused System 1. In our cold state, System 2 thoughtfully plans, I will start saving for retirement next month. I will go to the gym every morning. I will write that report well in advance.
But then the hot state of the present arrives and System 1 takes over. That gym sounds awful right now. This donut is delicious right now. That report can wait. I want to relax right now. The immediate pain of effort or the immediate pleasure of indulgence feels disproportionately large compared to the abstract, distant benefits of future well-being. Let me tell you about an experiment I ran with my students that perfectly illustrates this conflict. I had 3 classes of students, and their task was to write 3 papers over the semester. Class 1. No deadlines. Students could set their own deadlines for the papers, submitting them whenever they chose, as long as all 3 were in by the last day of class. This was meant to give them maximum flexibility and rational control. Class 2. Fixed deadlines. I imposed strict, equally spaced deadlines throughout the semester for all 3 papers. Class 3. Self-imposed deadlines. Students had to commit to specific, binding deadlines for each paper at the very beginning of the semester. Missing a deadline meant a penalty to their grade. Now, which class do you think performed the best submitting higher quality papers on time? If you guessed Class 1, the flexible group, you might be falling for the illusion of rational self-control. In reality, Class 2, fixed deadlines, performed the best, achieving the highest grades. Class 3, self-imposed deadlines, came in second, still significantly outperforming Class 1. Class 1, no deadlines, had the worst performance, with many students procrastinating until the last minute, leading to lower quality work and stress. This experiment clearly demonstrates the power of external commitments and self-imposed structures in overcoming present bias. We are not as good at self-regulation as we think we are. Even when given perfect freedom, our System 1's preference for immediate gratification pushes us astray, pushing off important tasks until the last frantic moment. The deadlines, whether external or self-imposed, acted as a crucial pre-commitment device, forcing students to engage their System 2 and deliver work before their present biased System 1 could derail them. The problem of procrastination and the failure of self-control are rampant in our lives. Saving for retirement. The future benefits of a comfortable retirement feel distant and abstract, while the immediate pleasure of current spending is concrete and appealing. Result? Chronic undersaving for many. Health behaviors. Eating that sugary treat now feels good. The long-term health consequences are far off. Skipping the gym now avoids immediate discomfort. The long-term fitness benefits are not immediately felt. Education and career development. Postponing studying, delaying skill acquisition, or avoiding difficult but important projects because the effort is immediate and the payoff is distant. Debt accumulation. The immediate pleasure of a purchase on credit outweighs the distant pain of repayment and interest. So, how do we conquer this deeply ingrained tendency? The solution lies in consciously creating structures that help our cold state, planning self manage our hot state, impulsive self. Embrace commitment devices. This is the Ulysses Pact for procrastination. Automatic savings. Set up automatic transfers to your savings or investment accounts immediately after you get paid. You remove the decision from your present biased self. Prepay for gym memberships or classes. The sunk cost and potential loss aversion can motivate you to go. Public commitments. Tell friends or family your goals. The social pressure can be a powerful motivator. Deadlines, self-imposed or external. Use tools like stick.com, which is a website where you commit money to a goal, and if you fail, it goes to an anti-charity, or simply set firm deadlines for yourself and tell others. Create friction for bad habits. Make undesirable actions harder to perform. Want to avoid late-night snacking? Don't keep junk food in the house. Want to reduce social media use? Delete apps from your phone or use website blockers. Want to stop impulse buying? Unsubscribe from promotional emails. Boost good habits. Make desirable actions easier to perform. Want to exercise? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Have your gym bag packed. Want to eat healthier? Meal prep on Sundays. Want to read more? Keep a book visible on your nightstand instead of your phone. Break down large goals. Large, distant goals feel overwhelming to System 1. Break them into smaller, more manageable steps with immediate, even if symbolic, rewards. This helps bridge the gap between immediate effort and distant payoff. Understand your triggers. Become aware of the situations, times of day, or emotional states that make you most susceptible to procrastination. Is it fatigue, stress, the start of the new week? Once you identify these, you can preemptively apply commitment devices or create friction for your bad habits. The problem of procrastination is not a moral failing. It's a predictable consequence of how our brains are wired. The battle for self-control is a continuous one between our two selves. But by understanding the predictable irrationality of present bias, and by deliberately designing our environment and choices with commitment devices, we can give our long-term rational goals a fighting chance against the powerful pull of immediate gratification. This active engagement is a hallmark of making better decisions, a skill we will continue to refine in the coming chapters. End of Chapter 5. The Problem of Procrastination and Self-Control.
Chapter 6. The Illusion of Ownership. Why We Overvalue What's Ours. The Endowment Effect. Have you ever tried to sell something, perhaps an old car, a piece of furniture, or even a collection of books, and found yourself convinced it was worth far more than any potential buyer was willing to pay? Or conversely, have you ever haggled fiercely for a used item, convinced the seller was being unreasonable, only to then cherish that same item deeply once it was yours? This isn't just about subjective taste. It's about a profound and pervasive cognitive bias known as the endowment effect. We irrationally overvalue things simply because we own them. This phenomenon is a direct consequence of a concept we've already touched upon: loss aversion. The pain of losing something is consistently more powerful than the pleasure of gaining an equivalent item. Once something becomes ours, it becomes part of our reference point. Parting with it is perceived as a loss, and because losses loom larger than gains, we demand significantly more to give it up than we would be willing to pay to acquire it, if it weren't already in our possession. Our System 1 shouts, "Don't let go," even when System 2 might calculate a different, more rational value. One of the most elegant and famous experiments demonstrating the endowment effect involved humble coffee mugs. I, along with some colleagues, conducted this study at a university. We divided students into two groups. Sellers. Each student received a university-branded coffee mug and was told it was theirs to keep. We then asked them how much they would be willing to sell their mug for. Buyers. These students were shown an identical mug and asked how much they would be willing to pay to buy it. Logically, if value were purely objective, the buying and selling prices should be very similar, perhaps converging on a market price. But that's not what happened. The results were remarkably consistent. The sellers demanded, on average, more than twice as much to part with their mugs as the buyers were willing to pay to acquire them. Sellers typically valued their mugs around $7. Buyers were only willing to pay around $3.50. Think about that for a moment. The moment the mug was given to the sellers, it wasn't just a mug anymore. It was their mug. The prospect of giving it up felt like a loss, and the pain of that loss inflated its perceived value. The buyers, not facing a loss, simply evaluated the mug on its own merits, and their perceived value was significantly lower. It's an irrational chasm, created purely by the act of ownership. This illusion of ownership isn't limited to coffee mugs. It pervades almost every aspect of our lives. Our homes, we often develop deep emotional attachments to our homes, leading us to overestimate their market value when selling. We remember the memories made there, the effort put into renovations, the unique features we love. These features aren't always valued equally by potential buyers who don't share our history or emotional investment. Cars and personal items. Selling a used car or even an old gadget can be frustrating. We recall the good times, the functionality it once provided, the initial cost. Buyers, however, see only the wear and tear, the depreciation, and their own immediate needs. Our attachment translates into an inflated asking price. Stocks and investments. Investors often hold on to losing stocks for too long, influenced by the endowment effect. They view selling as realizing a loss, which is painful.
If they didn't already own the stock, they would never buy it at its current price. But because it's theirs, they irrationally cling to it, hoping it will recover, further deepening their losses. Business assets and projects. Companies sometimes fall victim to this, refusing to abandon failing projects or outdated assets because of the investment already poured into them. This is often a blend of the endowment effect and the sunk cost fallacy, which we'll touch on again later, where past effort inflates perceived future value. Our ideas. Once we've conceived an idea, especially one we've invested time and effort into developing, we become deeply endowed with it. It's our idea. This makes it incredibly difficult to accept criticism, incorporate feedback, or abandon it, even if objective analysis suggests it's flawed. The irrationality of the endowment effect is particularly evident in online marketplaces. The ease of listing an item often leads people to set unrealistic prices, convinced their item is worth more than it is simply because it's their item. They forget that for a buyer, it's just an item, to be evaluated objectively against all other available options. So, how do we counteract this powerful bias and make more rational decisions about what we own, buy, and sell? First, cultivate detachment. When considering selling something, try to adopt the perspective of a potential buyer. Ask yourself, if I didn't already own this, what would I realistically pay for it right now? This mental exercise helps to reduce the emotional pull of ownership. Second, focus on true market value. For items with established markets, cars, homes, collectibles, actively research comparable sales and objective valuations. Don't let your emotional attachment override verifiable data. Third, challenge your initial asking price. If you're selling something, consciously lower your initial price expectation, acknowledging that your internalized value is likely inflated by the endowment effect. This can lead to faster sales and less frustration. Finally, be wary of trial periods and free samples. While they can be genuinely useful, marketers understand the endowment effect. Once you've used a product for a week or had a free sample in your home, you begin to feel a sense of ownership, making it harder to give up and more likely you'll pay for the full version, even if your rational assessment wouldn't warrant it. And finally, recognize it in your ideas and projects. When presenting a new idea or project, especially in a team setting, try to frame it as a shared possibility rather than my brilliant idea. Encourage constructive criticism and be genuinely open to abandoning it if the evidence point that way. Remember, the goal is the best outcome, not the preservation of your ownership. The illusion of ownership is a potent, unseen hand, subtly increasing the value of things simply because they are ours. By acknowledging this deeply ingrained tendency and actively practicing detachment, we can move closer to evaluating items, ideas, and even our own worth with greater objectivity, preventing the pain of loss aversion from dictating our choices. End of Chapter 6. The Illusion of Ownership.
Chapter 7. The Burden of Expectations. Why Beliefs Shape Our Experiences. What if I told you that your taste buds, your perception of pain, and even your enjoyment of an experience aren't just about objective reality, but are profoundly shaped by what you expect to happen? It sounds almost magical, doesn't it? Yet through a series of experiments, we can consistently demonstrate that our preconceived notions and expectations create a powerful lens through which we filter and interpret the world, often leading us to experience exactly what we expect, even when the underlying reality is unchanged. This is the power of expectation, and it's an invisible force that can both enhance and diminish our lives. Think about a simple example, a placebo. We all know the phenomenon where a sugar pill, believed to be a powerful medicine, can alleviate pain or cure symptoms. The pill itself has no active pharmacological ingredients, yet the expectation of relief triggers the body's own healing mechanisms. The mind, convinced it's receiving a cure, literally creates one. This isn't just a quirk of medicine, it's a fundamental principle of how our brains work.
Our beliefs don't just influence our thoughts, they actively construct our reality. Let me share an experiment conducted by my colleagues, which I find particularly illuminating. They wanted to test whether the perceived price of a painkiller could affect its actual efficacy. Participants were given a standard painkiller and then subjected to electrical shocks. Group 1 told the painkiller cost $2.50 per pill. Group 2 told the painkiller cost 10 cents per pill, the exact same pill. The results were astonishing. Group 1, who believed they were taking the more expensive and thus presumably more effective pill, reported significantly greater pain relief, almost twice as much compared to Group 2. The pill was identical. The shocks were identical. The only difference was the expectation generated by the price. Their brains, expecting more relief from the premium pill, delivered it. This same principle applies far beyond painkillers. Taste and food. Imagine you're at a wine tasting. If you're told a wine is from a prestigious vineyard and costs $100 a bottle, you're likely to perceive it as tasting richer, more complex, and more enjoyable than if you're told the exact same wine is a $10 supermarket special. Studies have even shown that our brains register more pleasure, measured by fMRI scans, when we believe we're consuming expensive wine. Our expectations literally enhance our sensory experience. Branding. Why are brand name products often perceived as superior to generic equivalents even when the ingredients are identical? Because the brand creates an expectation of quality, reliability, and status. This expectation shapes our experience, making the branded item feel better, even if objectively it's not. Stereotypes. This is a more troubling application of expectation. If we hold a negative stereotype about a particular group of people, our expectations can lead us to interpret their actions in ways that confirm that stereotype, even if we're misinterpreting neutral or even positive behavior. The expectation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Performance. The famous Pygmalion effect in psychology shows that if teachers are led to believe certain students are bloomers, even if they're randomly selected, those students tend to perform better. The teacher's heightened expectations subtly change their interactions, providing more support and encouragement, which the students internalize and fulfill. Technology and software. If a new software update is presented as revolutionary and bug-free, we might overlook small glitches that we would have noticed and complained about if we expected it to be buggy. The hype creates a positive filter. The burden of expectations is also a double-edged sword. Not only can positive expectations enhance our experience, but negative expectations can equally diminish it. If we anticipate a bad experience, a boring meeting, a difficult conversation, a terrible movie, our minds often seek out confirming evidence, making the experience worse than it might have been otherwise. We become primed to find fault, and our S1, ever eager to create a coherent story, obliges. One of the most powerful aspects of this bias is that it's often unconscious. We genuinely believe we are evaluating the wine on its taste, the painkiller on its effect, or the person on their merits. We don't realize how deeply our pre-existing beliefs are shaping our immediate sensory and emotional responses. Our S1 seamlessly integrates the expectation into the experience, making it feel like objective reality. So, how do we navigate this powerful, expectation-driven world? First, be aware of your own expectations. Before you try a new product, meet a new person, or attend an event, pause and consider what preconceived notions you might be bringing to the table. Are they positive, negative, or neutral? Simply acknowledging them can create a tiny space for S2 to observe rather than automatically confirm. Second, seek blind trials when possible. If you're genuinely trying to evaluate the quality of something, coffee, sound equipment, software, try to do so blind, without knowledge of brand, price, or origin. This removes the powerful influence of expectation and allows for a more objective assessment. While not always practical, the principle is invaluable. Third, challenge negative stereotypes and assumptions. Actively work to suspend judgment when meeting new people or encountering new situations. Look for evidence that contradicts your initial expectations. This requires deliberate effort, but it's essential for fostering open-mindedness and fair judgment. Fourth, leverage positive expectations wisely. For yourself, cultivate an optimistic realism. Expect good outcomes, but be prepared for challenges. For others, understand that your belief in their abilities or the quality of their work can genuinely influence their performance and experience. Ultimately, the power of expectation reveals that our minds are not passive receivers of information, but active constructors of reality. Our beliefs are not just internal thoughts, they are powerful architects of our sensory and emotional experiences. By understanding this burden and blessing of expectations, we gain a profound insight into ourselves and others, allowing us to cultivate a more intentional and hopefully more positive experience of the world. But our journey isn't over. Next, we delve into the curious realm of ownership and our strange attachment to what's ours. End of Chapter 7. The Burden of Expectations.
Chapter 8. The Cost of Our Own Creation. Why Labor Leads to Love. The IKEA Effect. Have you ever spent hours assembling a notoriously difficult flat-pack furniture item, cursing every cryptic diagram and misplaced screw, only to stand back proudly at the end, admiring your wonky creation as if it were a masterpiece? Or perhaps you've poured countless weekends into a DIY project, enduring frustrating setbacks, only to declare it far superior to anything you could have bought ready-made. This isn't just about frugality or skill, it's about a deep, often irrational psychological phenomenon, the IKEA effect. We assign a disproportionately high value to things that we have, at least partially, created ourselves. This effect is driven by several powerful human needs: the need for competence, the desire for meaning, and the inherent satisfaction that comes from bringing something into existence. When we invest our own labor, time, and effort into something, it becomes imbued with our personal essence. It's not just an object, it's a testament to our skill, our perseverance, our creative input. Our System 1 proudly declares, "I made this," and automatically inflates its perceived value, often far beyond what others would objectively assess it to be worth. My colleagues and I set out to test this precisely. We conducted a series of experiments, the most famous involving IKEA boxes, of course. Participants were given either pre-assembled IKEA boxes or were asked to assemble them themselves. Then we put the assembled boxes up for auction alongside professional pre-assembled boxes. Here's what we found. Participants who assembled the boxes themselves valued their creations significantly higher than those who were just shown the pre-assembled versions. They were willing to pay much more for their own IKEA box. Crucially, when asked to rate the quality of the boxes, the self-assemblers rated their own slightly wonky creations as being of higher quality than the perfectly assembled ones from the experimenters. This shows that the IKEA effect isn't just about sentimentality, it genuinely warps our perception of an item's quality and value. We fall in love with what we create. The IKEA effect and the deeper principle that labor leads to love permeates our lives in fascinating ways. Customization. Why do we love personalized items, customized clothes, or tailored experiences? Because our input, our choices, and our time spent configuring them make them ours in a profound way. The act of choosing colors, features, or engraving instills a sense of ownership and elevates the perceived value. Hobbies and crafts. People who knit, paint, garden, or build models often cherish their handmade items far more than they would a commercially produced equivalent, even if the professional item is objectively more skilled or durable. The joy of creation, the investment of self, makes the difference. Startup founders and entrepreneurs. This is a powerful, yet sometimes dangerous application. Founders become deeply endowed with their companies, having poured their sweat, tears, and life savings into their creation. This makes it incredibly difficult to objectively assess the company's true market value, to accept critical feedback, or to pivot when the market demands it. They see their baby, not just a business. The work in progress fallacy. Sometimes we also overvalue things that are still in progress because we envision the perfect final outcome. We invest more and more, convinced our continued effort will unlock its true, inflated value, sometimes falling prey to the sunk cost fallacy alongside the IKEA effect. Open source software and community projects. The success of open source projects often hinges on the IKEA effect. People contribute their labor and expertise not for direct payment, but because they have a stake in the creation. This sense of co-ownership fosters commitment and higher perceived value. The flip side of the IKEA effect is that we undervalue things that others have put their effort into, or things that are presented to us fully formed. If someone gives you a beautifully made, handcrafted item, you might appreciate it, but you're not likely to value it as highly as if you had made it yourself, or even just contributed a small part to its creation. We see the final product, but we don't feel the investment of self. So how do we harness the positive aspects of the IKEA effect while guarding against its irrational pitfalls? First, recognize your own bias. When you find yourself admiring a wonky shelf you just assembled or passionately defending a project you spearheaded, pause and ask, am I truly assessing its objective value, or is my ego celebrating my own effort? This self-awareness is key. Second, understand its power in motivating others. If you want someone to be invested in an idea or a project, don't just present them with a finished product. Give them a chance to contribute, to customize, to put their own stamp on it. Let them participate in its creation. This applies in the workplace, in education, and even in relationships. Third, be cautious when evaluating investments in your own creations. If you're an entrepreneur, an artist, or anyone deeply invested in their own output, actively seek objective feedback from people not involved in the creation process. Their cold assessment of market value or quality can provide a necessary reality check against your emotionally inflated view. Fourth, leverage customization for engagement. If you're designing products or services, think about how you can incorporate elements of user input or customization. This taps into the IKEA effect, making customers feel more invested and satisfied with their choices. The IKEA effect reminds us that humans are not just consumers, we are creators. And the act of creation, even partial creation, has a profound and often irrational impact on our perception of value. By understanding this unseen hand, we can not only appreciate our own efforts more deeply, but also design better systems, motivate others more effectively, and make more balanced judgments about the true worth of our own creations. End of Chapter 8.
Chapter 9. The Pain of Paying. Why cash feels different than credit and why it matters. Have you ever noticed how easily money seems to slip through your fingers when you're using a credit card or a mobile payment app, compared to the distinct reluctance you feel when handing over cold, hard cash? It's a subtle difference, but it's a powerful one, profoundly influencing our spending habits and our perception of value. This is the pain of paying, and it's a central concept in understanding why certain payment methods can make us predictably irrational in our financial decisions. The pain of paying refers to the immediate, visceral discomfort we experience when we part with our money. It's a natural deterrent, a System 1 alert system designed to make us pause before spending. However, not all payment methods inflict the same amount of pain. Paying with physical cash generally causes the most pain. You literally see the money leave your hand, feel its weight diminish in your wallet. It's a tangible, immediate loss. This direct feedback makes us more mindful of our spending. Credit cards? Paying with a credit card reduces the pain of paying significantly. The transaction is frictionless. You swipe, you tap, you sign, and the money doesn't actually leave your account for weeks. There's a psychological disconnect between the purchase and the payment, delaying the pain. Mobile payments or digital wallets, these often reduce the pain even further. A quick scan or tap, and the money is gone, with almost no tangible interaction. The immediacy of the payment is masked by the ease of the technology. Prepaid systems or bundles, think about paying for an all-inclusive vacation or a monthly subscription service like Netflix.
Once the initial payment is made, the subsequent consumption feels free, or at least significantly cheaper, making the pain of paying concentrated up front, making subsequent usage almost frictionless. My colleagues and I have run experiments to demonstrate this effect. In one scenario, participants were asked to buy snacks from a vending machine. One group paid with cash, the other with a digital payment method. Those who paid with cash were generally more frugal, making fewer impulse purchases and opting for less expensive items. The act of handing over physical money was a stronger deterrent. The implications of the pain of paying are vast and affect our everyday financial lives. Increased spending with credit cards. Studies consistently show that people spend more when using credit cards compared to cash. The reduced pain allows System 1 to be more impulsive and System 2 to be lazier in scrutinizing the purchase. This is why credit card companies love their customers, and it's why we often regret those spontaneous purchases when the bill finally arrives. Bundling services. Businesses often bundle services, e.g. cable TV, internet, phone, vacation packages. While there can be economies of scale, bundling also exploits the pain of paying. You pay one large fee up front, and then the individual components, watching a movie, making a call, feel free or low cost. This encourages greater consumption of each component than if you paid for them individually. Prepayment for events or experiences. When you buy concert tickets or book a non-refundable trip months in advance, the pain of paying is in the past. When the event finally arrives, the experience feels free, or at least significantly cheaper, leading to greater enjoyment and less hesitation to partake fully. Subscription services. From streaming services to meal kits, subscriptions involve a single recurring payment. Once subscribed, the immediate cost of each usage feels non-existent, encouraging regular use, even if monthly usage is low. This is fantastic for businesses, but can lead consumers to pay for services they underutilize. Gambling and tokens. Casinos cleverly use chips instead of cash. By converting money into tokens, they subtly reduce the pain of paying. Betting chips feels less like losing real money, encouraging more reckless play. The pain of paying also connects to the concept of mental accounting, a term coined by Richard Thaler. We categorize money into different accounts, e.g. entertainment money, rent money, savings. The payment method influences which mental account is activated and how we perceive the expenditure. Losing a $50 bill from your wallet, which feels like cash, feels different than seeing a $50 charge on your credit card statement, which feels like an abstract number. So, how do we become more intentional about our spending and outsmart the varying pains of paying? First, be aware of the payment method's influence. Before making a significant purchase, pause and consider, would I be as willing to buy this if I had to pay with physical cash right now? This mental simulation can reintroduce the pain of paying. Second, use cash for discretionary spending. If you struggle with impulse purchases, especially for categories like entertainment, dining out, and non-essentials, try using a cash-only budget. The tangible act of parting with physical money will naturally make you more mindful. Third, debundle when appropriate. For services you consume regularly, consider whether a bundled package truly offers you value or if you're paying for components you rarely use. Breaking down the costs can provide a more realistic picture of consumption. Fourth, practice delayed gratification. If you're considering a significant purchase on a credit card, commit to waiting 24 to 48 hours. This delay allows the initial excitement, System 1, to cool, giving your System 2 a chance to rationally assess the need and the long-term cost. Finally, leverage the pain of paying for saving. Just as frictionless payment makes spending easier, creating friction for withdrawing savings can make saving easier. Set up separate savings accounts, make transfers automatic and difficult to reverse quickly, or even use apps that penalize withdrawals. The pain of paying is an unseen hand, guiding our financial decisions with varying degrees of force. By understanding how different payment methods mask or highlight this pain, we gain a powerful tool for controlling our impulses, making more intentional spending choices, and ultimately building a healthier financial future. Our final chapter will tie all these insights together, offering a framework for navigating a world designed to exploit our predictable irrationalities. End of Chapter 9. The Pain of Paying, Why Cash Feels Different Than Credit, and Why It Matters.
Chapter 10.
Designing for better decisions. How to outsmart your own brain. We've journeyed through a fascinating landscape of human irrationality. We've seen how relativity shapes our preferences, how free lures us into costly choices, how social and market norms clash, how hot states hijack our self-control, how procrastination plagues our best intentions, how we overvalue what's ours, how expectations construct our reality, and how the pain of paying influences our wallets. The consistent theme? We are not the perfectly rational beings we often assume ourselves to be. Our minds are equipped with powerful, efficient, yet often flawed algorithms that lead us into predictable, systematic errors. So, where does this leave us? Should we despair? Should we throw up our hands and declare ourselves helpless victims of our own cognitive biases? Absolutely not. The power of understanding predictable irrationality lies precisely in its predictability. If our errors are systematic, then we can design strategies for ourselves, our organizations, and our societies to counteract them. We can become cognitive engineers, building systems that nudge us towards better choices, rather than leaving us vulnerable to our default irrational impulses. This final chapter is about designing for better decisions. It's about leveraging the very insights we've gained to outsmart our own brains, not by wishing away our biases, but by working with them or around them. 1. Personal cognitive prosthetics, engineering your own environment. The most immediate and impactful changes we can make are in our personal environments. Just as a physical prosthetic aids a limb, a cognitive prosthetic aids our decision-making. Pre-commitment devices, revisited and expanded. This is perhaps the most powerful tool. Acknowledging your hot state self will betray your cold state intentions, create barriers. Financial. Set up automatic savings, as discussed. Use apps that freeze savings or even subscribe to services that automatically invest spare change. Health. Pre-pack healthy lunches, lay out workout clothes, schedule exercise with a friend, or even use apps that penalize you for not hitting fitness goals. Productivity. Use website blockers, work in distraction-free environments, or use the Pomodoro technique to chunk work into focused sprints. Reduce friction for good habits, increase friction for bad habits. Make the desired behavior the easiest default. Good. Place healthy snacks at eye level, keep water bottles accessible, automate bill payments. Bad, unsubscribe from tempting emails, move junk food out of sight, delete distracting apps from your home screen. Change your defaults. We tend to stick with the default option. If you want to encourage organ donation, make opt out the default rather than opt in. For personal finance, make saving the default action. Build in cooling off periods. For important decisions, large purchases, emotionally charged emails, or significant commitments, institute a mandatory waiting period. This gives your rational system 2 time to re-engage once the immediate emotional arousal, system 1, has subsided. Seek blind feedback. When evaluating your own work or ideas, try to remove context that could bias others and yourself. Ask for feedback on content without revealing it's your creation, if possible. 2. Organizational nudges, creating better systems for teams. Businesses, nonprofits, and governments can also design environments that leverage our predictable irrationalities for better collective outcomes. Transparent comparison tools. Instead of letting relativity run wild, provide clear, objective comparison frameworks for products or services. Help customers compare apples to apples, mitigating the decoy effect. Harnessing social norms ethically. Instead of small financial incentives for tasks that should be driven by goodwill, lean into the power of social recognition, peer pressure, and a sense of shared purpose. Foster community, which intrinsically motivates. Structure feedback for objectivity. When evaluating employees or projects, create structured feedback mechanisms that reduce bias. For example, using specific rubrics, requiring specific examples rather than general impressions,
or even anonymizing submissions where appropriate to combat the halo effect. The pre-mortem revisited. This organizational tool is paramount. Before a project launches, imagine it has failed and brainstorm reasons why. This actively combats overconfidence and the planning fallacy, forcing teams to confront potential weaknesses. Design for procrastination. Acknowledge that employees will procrastinate. Implement staggered deadlines, provide structured check-ins, or break large projects into smaller, incentivized milestones. 3. Societal architecture, nudging towards collective well-being. Governments and public institutions have a powerful role to play in designing choices that benefit society. Opt-out programs. For initiatives like organ donation or retirement savings, making opt-out the default rather than opt-in dramatically increases participation rates, leveraging the power of inertia and defaults. Clear and accessible information. Frame important information, for example, health warnings or financial disclosures, in clear, concise language that is easy for System 1 to process and not just dense legalese that only System 2 can decipher. Contextual cues. Use visual cues, reminders, and just-in-time information to nudge people towards desired behaviors. For example, calorie counts on menus, speed limit reminders. Ethical framing. Be mindful of how policies are framed, gains versus losses, and their impact on public acceptance and behavior. Transparency about this framing is key for trust. The ongoing journey of self-correction. Understanding predictable irrationality isn't a one-time revelation. It's a continuous process of self-observation and adaptation. We are, after all, human, and our cognitive biases are deeply ingrained. But with the knowledge gained from this book, you are no longer operating in the dark. You can now see the unseen hands at work, not just in yourself, but in the people around you, in the marketplace, and in society at large. The journey to better decision-making is about humility, acknowledging our flaws, and empowerment, knowing we can do something about them. It's about shifting from passively reacting to the forces that influence us, to actively designing a life where we are more intentional, more resilient, and ultimately more free from the predictable pitfalls of our own amazing, yet sometimes flawed brains. So go forth. Observe your world with new eyes. Challenge your assumptions. Design better choices. And remember, the path to living a more rational life isn't about eradicating irrationality, but about strategically outsmarting it one predictable bias at a time. The game is afoot, and now you have a better understanding of its rules. End of Chapter 10. Designing for Better Decisions.